We're recording. So I'm going to hand over to you, Kevin. Sorry, I keep
Yeah,
calling you Kev. Is Kev all right?
yeah, it's fine. Kev amongst friends is fine, and
Great.
yeah,
Okay.
Wolo's definitely a friend.
Oh,
So
and
yeah,
thank you. And we might have some others join in as we go. But if anyone's
great.
got any questions as we go through, if you put your hands up on your screens, and then we can come to you for questions. But Kev's going to just talk us through his story, his inspiring story, and how he came to write this beautiful book. And I think actually most of us, yeah, but there we go. Most of us have the book, apart from Gina. And but I'm going to give you a copy at the next yoga session, Gina.
Thank you.
So, I'll hand over to you, Kev.
Thanks very much, Sam, and thanks everybody for your time this evening. I know how valuable evenings are, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal story, just to give you a bit of context, and then about the book and how the book came about and the impact the book is having. So my story starts almost 6 years ago when I visited my GP with a strange-looking cyst on my forearm, which I was told after the GP had a good look at it, it wasn't cancerous. Here's some cream. Off you go. Come back if it changes. And perhaps I left it a bit too long. It started to change. I went back, and then I was referred to a dermatologist who did a biopsy, and I then got a phone call saying, "Oh, can you come into the hospital straight away?" And at that point, you know there's something untoward going on. Unfortunately, I was down in London at the time, so it took me a couple of days to get back and go and see him. And he told me that the biopsy had shown I had stage 2 melanoma, and it was cancerous in my arm. So at that point, your world starts spinning when you're told you have cancer, and you try and find out as much as possible. But at the same time, you really don't want to know, and you have to tell your family. But thankfully, I had an operation. They checked one of my lymph nodes, which anyone in the world of cancer knows that's usually where it spreads to. And I was told that the cancer had not spread to my lymph nodes. They'd removed the stage 2 melanoma, and I was cancer free. And I could go on and live the rest of my life, which was a huge relief. And so I started to do that. Then 18 months later, due to back pain, which resulted in an x-ray in a hospital in Manchester. Again, I was away on business. I was then referred for a CT scan because there was something on my lung they didn't like the look of. And following the CT scan, I went to see an oncologist. And I did the most stupid thing ever that I've ever done. I convinced my wife she didn't need to come. I was probably just going to go and have a chat about it might be this or it might be that. And I went to see the oncologist. Edinburgh's my nearest oncology centre, the Western General Hospital. And the oncologist told me I had stage 4 metastatic melanoma with a tumour in my right lung and a tumour next to my spine. And it was life limiting and incurable, which was not the news you really wanted to hear. And so, again, the wrecking ball of cancer started swinging its way through our lives. But he did tell me that, thankfully, due to research and developments in the cancer world, melanoma, which previously no drugs could treat, there was a new drug on the circuit known as immunotherapy, which had a good chance of extending my life. So then began a completely different life of having to explain to the family and the kids and figuring out what to do with work, as I was due to start cancer treatment to try and stop the cancer from spreading. Melanoma is quite an aggressive cancer, and I come from a background of IT. I deal in data and I deal in measurement, and so I'd asked the oncologist, what the chances were of the drug working, and he told me, and the odds weren't on my side, and I realised at that point, um, being diagnosed in December just before Christmas, that if the treatment didn't work, then this was probably the last Christmas I was going to spend with my family. So that put a real strain on my mental health. But we faced the start of the new year, and my wife and I thought, right, we need to go and spend time in between treatments, visiting friends and family, because chances were this I might not be around in about 9 or 12 months' time. So we made lots of plans to go traveling, to take holidays in between the treatment at the start of 2020. We were going to fit everything in that we possibly could. Little did we know that COVID had other ideas for us. So literally 6 weeks after starting treatment, we went into lockdown. And my mental health was challenged before lockdown, but my God, was it challenged afterwards. Just staring out the window, only leaving the house to go and get treatment, thankfully at my local hospital, but not knowing if the cancer treatment was working. And so my mental health went into a bit of a spiral, and I felt even more isolated and alone. And at that point, I knew I had to try and reach out and find other people in a similar situation. So, because everything was online, a lot of charities and support groups had moved to online, and I managed to find an amazing melanoma support group and a men's mental health charity that helped me to come to terms with what myself and my family were going through. And it was through getting to know specifically the melanoma group and sharing my story and hearing their story that I suddenly found my tribe. I found people that understood what I was going through. So as much as my wife and my kids and mother and sister love me, this is a lived experience, and it's very hard to actually sometimes share with the people that you love how you feel. But within this group, I had a safe space to share my fears, anxieties, and also hopes as well with this community. And it sparked an idea within me that by sharing my story with them and listening to their stories, wouldn't it be great to try and gather some stories to help other people who are affected by cancer? And when I talk about people affected by cancer, it's not just those of us that are diagnosed. It's our partners, friends, family, work colleagues. Cancer touches everyone's life. So I started off with the idea, and I thought I wanted to try and collect stories across as many different types of cancer from as many people as possible. I had an idea that perhaps I could gather about 20 stories, and I thought if I can find somebody or a company that were willing to sponsor, maybe I can print some copies and give them away. So I started to reach out to people I knew personally who'd been affected by cancer, either themselves or a family member or a friend. I also reached out to my business community. I knew some people that had been affected by cancer. And I also started searching Twitter for people that were happy to talk about their cancer experience. So, for anyone on Twitter, there are a lot of people that are happy to talk about their cancer experience and support other people. And one of the first people that I went to chat to was a business contact, a chap called Ricky Nicol, who had a very successful IT company in Scotland. He'd sold it, and his plans for getting a brand new house and a brand new car were shot down quickly by his wife, who said, "No, I'm happy with my house. You're not getting a new car." And but Ricky had a bit of time on his hands, and he shared his story with me. He had head and neck cancer some 15 years previously, and I was chatting the idea through with Ricky about trying to print a number of these stories and just give them away. Give the stories, give the books away to cancer charities, treatment centres. Ricky thought this was a great idea. And within 24 hours, he'd called me back and said, "How much do you need, Kevin, to produce the book?" And I plucked a figure out of the air. I just said, "It's going to cost this much, Ricky." And he said, "Great, my company will pay for the books to be printed." So I then had a sponsor. What I then had to do was to try and gather, these 20 or 25 stories. And I took some advice from a lady that's in the world of publishing who owns a fantastic bookshop not far from us. And she said, well, be very careful. It'll be nearly impossible to say no to somebody that might want to share their story. So from an idea of gathering 20 or 25 stories, I ended up with 39 stories. because I couldn't say no. And I didn't want to say no either, because everyone's story is incredibly important, not just to them, but to us as well. And as well as wanting to collect stories which covered a number of different types of cancers, as anyone that's read the book, there are quite a few melanoma cancer stories in there, but that's my community. I knew a lot of people with melanoma cancer. But I wanted to collect stories on different types of cancer. And it was very important for me that within this book, we didn't paint a rosy picture and everyone lived happily ever after. Because as we unfortunately know, that is not the reality of cancer. So I consciously wanted to put stories in there that were told of people that are no longer with us. And I also knew that as time went on, we would lose some contributors as well. In fact, the book is dedicated to an amazing woman called Anna, who unfortunately didn't live to see the book published. And we have lost a few other contributors since. So we had the book published, and again, I just went out and contacted cancer charities and organizations through social media, which is how I met Justin. Wolo popped up on my feed, and I went, "Oh, they look quite interesting." And I just approached the organization and said, "Would you like this book? It's free of charge and it has stories of cancer and hope." And the vast majority of organizations I contacted said, "Yes, would love copies." And due to the sponsorship, we had 1,500 copies initially to give away. And one of the defining moments in this whole story was I'd heard of Maggie's. I never used Maggie's because there wasn't one locally to me. My treatment was down here in the Scottish borders, which is a good hour and a half away from the Western General, the oncology centre. But I'd heard good things about it. So I walked into Maggie's one day and said, "I have an idea about a book. Can I speak to someone?" And it just so happens the head of Maggie's Edinburgh was there. And we sat down and we had a chat. And I told him about the concept. And within 24 hours, he came back and said, "Yes, we'd love books in all 24 of our centres as well." And I'll come on to the Maggie's relationship. So I started to gather organizations that wanted the book. So in May of last year, we sent out 1,500 copies free of charge. Nobody paid for, no organizations paid for the book. There was no cost for carriage at all. And it was entirely up to them how they wanted to use the book. Some organizations would have them on the shelf. Others would have events and they would hand them out. Some others just contacted their members saying, "We've got these books, would you like a copy?" And it soon became apparent that 1,500 just wasn't enough. Some of the charities would run out and ask for more. Word spread, and I then had other charities contacting me saying, "Do you have any more of those books?" So again, I went to my business contacts in the world of IT, and I managed to get 10 other companies to sponsor a small amount each. And in November, we produced 5,000 more copies free of charge. And again, I spent time on social media, contacting other cancer charities, treatment centres, cancer support groups, and just asking if anyone would like free of charge copies. And again, the vast majority of organisations came back and said yes. So in November, between November and the start of this year, we shipped another 5,000 copies of the book free of charge. So there are now 6,500 copies out there in circulation. But yet I was still being asked by individuals if they could buy a copy. Now, the book was originally never meant to be sold. It was meant to be given away. But if anyone knows the stats in our cancer world, in the UK alone, there are 350,000 people diagnosed each year with cancer. And they all have friends, family, colleagues that want to help in some way. So I was constantly being asked, not just within the UK, but outside the UK, how can I get hold of this book? So I came up with the idea, and the contributors are always involved in all the decision-making process. I always call this our book. It's not my book. It belongs to the 39 people who contributed their story, including myself. And another very important point: this is self-published. I don't know if anyone on here is in the world of publishing. But if you get a phone call from someone saying, I'd like to work with you as a publisher and I want to give away 6,500 copies of the book free of charge, it'd be a very short conversation. So I knew we had to self-publish this. So with the help of an amazing friend, Derek, who's a graphic designer who did all the setting, another friend, Norman, who did the editing, my son, my sister, who did the editing, my nieces and nephew, who have all got degrees in English or media or journalism, did all the proofreading. And I'm very proud to say that our daughter did the design of the cover, and she also did the illustration of Anna inside. And I'll come on to Anna's story as well. So this is friends and family that gave their time willingly. The only people who got paid in this whole process were the printers, because you have to pay the printers, or else you just don't get a book. So this is a very, very, very personal project for all of us, and everyone wanted to give their time and effort to help out. So, as I said, we had people who wanted to buy copies, and in the world of publishing, the most cost-effective way to do it is to put a digital copy up on Amazon, Apple, Kobo, etc. But I didn't know any publishers, so I went through the Scottish Publishing website and found a publisher who specialised in health publications. Lovely lady called Maria. I got in touch with her. I sent her a copy of the book, and I said, I'm looking to work with someone that can help me get this up on Amazon and the other platforms. And at the heart of this book, my commitment to all the contributors and everyone who's given their time and love behind this project is I will never make any money out of this book. I have no interest at all in getting any royalties or making any money from this. This is all about helping people affected by cancer. And so I met with Maria, and unbeknownst to me, when I explained what the book was and that I wanted to give the profits to Maggie's, because they ticked the box with regard to being a national cancer organization and they're an umbrella cancer organization. There are melanoma charities out there, lung cancer, so many different types, but Maggie's is one of these umbrella organizations. And I just got a lovely warm feeling when I went into Maggie's in Edinburgh. And Maggie's Edinburgh, for anyone that doesn't know, was the first centre in the UK. Maggie herself was treated at the Western General, and I'm being treated at the Western General Hospital, and it's also where I was born as well. So there was a great connection with Maggie's there. So at the start of this year, we launched the book on Amazon and all the other platforms, and all of the profit after cost, Amazon take their slice and Apple take their slice, and Maria takes a very, very small percentage, which is, again, is unusual in the world of publishing. The rest of the profit all goes to Maggie's, and we'll be presenting a check to them at the end of this month with the first 3 months worth of sales. And we're now looking into plans to try and get the physical book available for sale, because, again, based on feedback, not everyone likes using digital devices. Not everyone knows how to use a digital device. And for everyone who's got a copy, I think that there's something lovely about either receiving this or giving this to somebody. And the feedback I've got, it looks and feels fantastic. And if you're going to give this to someone who's affected by cancer, it perhaps means more than getting an email through saying you've got an electronic copy of this.
It's having something tangible, isn't it? It feels.
It is, yes.
And presumably, obviously, while all this is going on, you're actually going through treatment yourself.
Yes, I was, to let everybody know. So I started treatment on immunotherapy. Not sure if anyone on the call's familiar with immunotherapy, but the drug I was on was pembrolizumab, known as Keytruda. And I was put on that because, unfortunately, one of the major side effects of immunotherapy is your body starts attacking itself in different ways. And ulcerative colitis, which is when your bowel, your immune system starts attacking your bowel, is one of the common side effects. Unfortunately, I've had ulcerative colitis for about 28 years, so that they put me on that drug. So yeah, I started on the immunotherapy treatment, and I must admit I felt quite guilty going into the local oncology centre. And of course, it was during COVID, so we were all kept apart, masks on, everything was washed at least 3 or 4 times. And immunotherapy, you don't lose your hair. You go in, you look normal. You leave, and you look normal. But we know there are other people in there who are having a terrible time on chemotherapy. So yeah, I felt a little bit guilty. But after about 7 or 8 months, the side effects kicked in, and I'd spent 3 weeks in hospital trying to get my colitis under control. And the strange thing is that immunotherapy boosts your immune system. The term that the father of immunotherapy, Dr. Jim Allison, uses is it takes the handbrakes off your immune system. So it's better at looking for and detecting and then trying to, counter the cancer cells, because we know cancer cells are very good at hiding. And immunotherapy was initially developed for melanoma, because melanoma did not respond to radiotherapy, did not respond to any types of chemotherapy. And for it, again, you may know this, but immunotherapy is now being used for different types of cancer. So it's being used for types of kidney cancer, lung cancer, and there's an amazing story down in Australia for of a melanoma practitioner and researcher who has ended up with glioblastoma, and he's using immunotherapy on himself to try and target that. So yes, we had all this going on at the same time, but I only lasted 8 months on immunotherapy. But by that time, thankfully, my tumors had start to shrunk. And my oncologist decided the immunotherapy had really done its job, and they then had to concentrate on my ulcerative colitis. So immunotherapy takes the handbrakes off your immune system, and then I had to be put on immunosuppressants because my body was attacking itself. And of course, I'm thinking, oh my God, if my immune system suddenly being suppressed instead of accelerated, is the cancer going to start, spreading different places? But thankfully, after 4 years, cancer is still under control. I'm classed as NED. It's still classed as life-limiting and incurable. But when I met my oncologist recently, he said, "Well, the longer you live, the less chance there is of it coming back." So I'll definitely take that from a personal perspective.
That's amazing. That they've started using immunotherapy with triple negative breast cancer as well, in conjunction with chemotherapy. Sorry,
Wow.
I'm in there. Yeah, so that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's
So that
inspiring. You were doing all of that at whilst going through all that treatment and all that worrying, but it kind of makes you think that that's having that focus. Sorry, is it echoing where you are or just here? Just in my head.
No, it's okay.
there is a slight echo somewhere.
Okay, yeah, it makes you wonder, having that focus, if somehow that gets you through. And
Yeah, it does, and at the having been given a diagnosis, having quite my mortality was being challenged. I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen, and I was looking for hope. And if anyone's read my story, I found hope in a very strange place. I had taken the decision to tell my customers, a lot of whom are very good friends, that I had to stop work in order to start cancer treatment. And I was chatting to one customer, and one of the directors said, "What treatment are you getting?" I said, it was almost an offhand comment. I said, "Oh, it's immunotherapy. Not many people have heard of it." And I said, "Well, my brother has a company in Australia, and he tests immunotherapy, and he does trials on it. I'll put you in touch." And that was my hope. As soon as I spoke to his brother, suddenly the lights came on, because he was an expert on immunotherapy and melanoma. So unfortunately, melanoma is the #1 cancer in Australia. It's spreading, unfortunately. But I made that connection with him, and that's when my hope sort of turned into reality. So yeah, it was a very strange experience. But having been through that and knowing how I felt, and then finding people who felt the same and had been on a similar journey, at the heart of the book and all of the stories is the theme is you're not alone. And I know not all the stories have a happy ending, but what I found, and you might be able to relate to this as well, hope can change. It can mean different things at different times. So, if you're not feeling well over a prolonged period, you hope it's nothing serious. You hope it's not cancer. If it turns out it is cancer, you hope it's curable. If it's not curable, you hope you can live as long as possible and fulfill those things that you want to do, which for me was seeing my daughter start university, seeing my son graduate from university. And when I've spoken to people as well who have a terminal diagnosis, again, hope means something different for them. That for some people, hope is that they have a pain-free end of life, and they hope that the family will be okay without them. And it hope is constant, but it can change as you go through this journey.
Yeah, so true. Has anybody got any questions? I knew Justin would come off.
Thank you. Kev, thank you so much for sharing not only your story, it's your life story and those lovely people that are featured in your book. I know I can personally relate to those times personally. I think many of us on this call of COVID and that lonely sort of place. And yeah, we all needed hope, and I wish your book was there, years ago. Well, I say years, it is years now, isn't it? Because I suppose when you talk about tribe, Wolo, we found our little community, our tribe, who we're about down here, and unfortunately, we don't have a Maggie's down our way near Brighton.
Yeah.
We'd love one. I think
I'll put in a word for you with
please do. I believe Southampton and London are the nearest.
Yeah, Marsden maybe in Southampton might be
that's
the
it.
nearest.
I've heard fantastic things about them, and
Yeah.
I just want to. I'd like you to personally thank that guy who put the money in, that helped you,
Ricky,
because sometimes, these things, we have all these ideas and various things, and it takes someone or something for something to happen. And, that guy, he won't probably ever realize the impact he's ever made, but actually, it's amazing really, because in my own personal life, there's, few people have believed in me and us, Wolo, and things we've been doing. And it means a lot when things happen out of the blue, and it's all these little things that happen. It's
it
amazing.
is. Yeah, and because Ricky had that lived experience, he could relate to it. And we know in life, not just in business, it's easy to say no, isn't it? Just and no is the easiest thing to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, thank you, Kev. And I mean, I know we've been handing out the books to the many families we support and things. Of one of which was the end of a wellness course, wasn't it, Sam? That maybe share with Kev how that went, and it was a lovely ending, wasn't it? What we did there.
Yes. So we have a wellness program that we started last year, and it kicks off with a 2-day, 3-day, 2-night, 3-day residential. And then there's a lot of breath work and cold water therapy. Helen's been on the course, and I've been on the course, and Marcus has facilitated it. Justin's been on the course. And there's a lot of time to sit with your uncomfortable thoughts.
Yeah.
And it just explore really things that you want to address. And there's some yoga, and there's some community. There's 10 of us there, and eating really healthy food and just stripping everything right back. And then that goes to a 6-week program of building on those tools that we've learned on Zoom. And then at the end, we come together just to connect again and do some journaling together. But at the end, everybody got one of your books. So yeah, which went down really well. And it's our tribe, exactly how you've explained it. It's we've all found our tribe, and we've all come from different backgrounds, but we've got that one thing in common, that we've faced that, like you say, that lived experience, that we can all relate to each other. Whether it was us that was diagnosed, or a family member of someone in the in the home, that fear of the worst happening, we've all shared that, and been in those dark moments. So yeah, the book was an absolute perfect gift to give to everybody as we
Thanks for doing that. I remember seeing the post on social media, which I shared as well. And what, for anyone that's read the book, you'll understand it's not an easy read. It's not the sort of thing you take on holiday and lie in the sun lounger.
no
It's not John Grisham or a Marianne Keyes. And the advice I give people when they're reading it is take your time. And also it can be very tempting to look for the stories that relate to your type of cancer. But I do encourage people to read all the stories, because you will find various themes or scenarios that you can perhaps relate to, especially with the emotions that you go through, the fear and the anxiety and the hope and the isolation. And it's when we get together as a group, regardless of our cancer, we all have something in common. From that point of diagnosis through whatever treatment we went through, that there are common themes that we will find. And so that's why I try and encourage people. And I'm going to throw a question over to anybody. And don't worry if the answer is no or a partial yes. But has anybody read some or all of the book? And if so, what do you think?
I've read some of it, not all of it.
Yeah.
And I've done exactly what you wrote at the beginning, which was, read it over time. Read it over time. I think I could probably read it within, a really short period of time, but I don't think it would do me much good. But bite-sized chunks.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and has it helped in any way? And I'm also conscious that there's some people it's too scary to read, because it is people being honest about their journey.
Yeah, Kev, I remember I'm rubbish with the names, but I remember I think the first 3 stories I flicked through it, and the first 3 were very sad. But I sat with it, and then I think I picked it up the next week, and it's a completely different vibe. So depending, it's literally like it's the day-to-day book. One day it felt completely different to the next, but actually, for me personally, I it sounds strange, but deal with death and that side of things quite regularly, I guess. That's not a good thing, I believe, but something that has sat with me, and I'm forever processing and learning, and have different feelings and different days about it. And I remember the first time that I read that, especially the first 2 stories, it did make me think about things slightly differently. And then I remember we did a workshop, Sam, didn't we, with a death doula, like a birth doula, so sort of dying happy, that sort of thing. And it just raised questions, and these were good things. It made me think about things in a different way. So it helped me with that conversation. It made me think differently, because I know my wife, she speaks very openly about death and things and stuff. And I suppose, it scares the hell out of me. But, my more recent years and things like this help me certainly think about it, in a better light, for sure.
Yeah.
Helen, did you want to just say about the book?
It's kind of a tangent really, but I was just wondering how you decided what order to put the stories, because like Justin said, the first few were scary, but how do you have those collections?
Well, I tried to create a balance. You know, there were stories in there of people that at the time the book was written are no longer with us, and I wanted to try and space them out. And I was conscious there were 10 stories of melanoma. I didn't want to have 3 or 4 stories of melanoma running together. So it took me quite a while to try and figure out the running order. And there's some that, you know, have very light moments in it. If anyone's ever read Deborah Kinnear's story, which is, you know, age 30 being diagnosed with breast cancer. She finds herself in the day oncology unit having being treated with chemotherapy. And sitting across from her is this lady who's about 60 or 65 years old. And every single finger on her hand is covered with at least 2, sometimes 3 diamond rings. And she'd never seen this before. And the lady with the rings noticed that Deborah was staring at her. And she said, and I can't do the Cockney accent, but she had a really broad Cockney accent. She said, oh, would you like to know the story of these rings, love? And Deborah said, yeah, please tell me. And so she said, it was a few years previously, she'd been diagnosed with breast cancer, and her husband promised to buy her a diamond ring for every year after she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she must have had about 25 rings. And I'm not sure if the cancer had come back. And she told Deborah that her husband was now thinking of bumping her off because it's costing him a fortune to keep buying her a diamond ring. And it's moments like that. I think we all know, you know, cancer is a very dark place, but sometimes, you know, there are humorous situations that we can relate to. And I just love that. That's one of them.
And it's like you said earlier about, you know, us finding something in common with people, but it might not necessarily be with the person that has the same cancer as you, because we all know as well, in this world of cancer, the one word cancer, but no cancer journey is the same to the person that's next to you. Everything is different. You might have the same cancer as somebody, but your journey will be completely different.
It is, and yet there's so many common themes, you know, from how you felt when you first diagnosed, and you know, I still have to explain anxiety to people.
Yeah.
But we all know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to explain it, and I'm going to tell you as well, that hopefully you can see this, but as I said, the book is dedicated to Anna, who's one of our melanoma tribe, and I'll tell you the story of this illustration and Anna. So Anna was a music teacher. Actually, she had a PhD in music, and she'd been diagnosed with melanoma, but unfortunately it came back, and they tried her out on the immunotherapy treatment, and it was keeping it under control. But Anna was a free spirit, a great way to describe her. And her husband and friends had gone on a weekend to Copenhagen, and they were having a wonderful time, and they were due to fly back to England. And Anna just spotted this sign by the bay of a ship that could take you up to the Arctic Circle on a 4-day cruise from Copenhagen. And she decided there and then, we're doing that cruise. I'm not going back. I want to go to the Arctic Circle. So her husband and her friend, right, okay, we'll do that. And they go up to the very tip, and they get off to walk around. And there was an abandoned Russian meteorological station there. And Anna went in, and in the middle of it, there's no furniture at all, but there was an upright piano. And Anna sat down and started playing When I'm 64 by the Beatles. And her husband just got 10 seconds of video of Anna playing this. And then she turned around and just said to her husband, I ran out of keys. That's it. It's over. Unfortunately, Anna passed just a few months before the book was released. I went down to her service, which might be near where you guys are based, Shoreham-on-Sea. Yeah, she was a teacher there for a number of years. That's where she grew up. And at the service, they played this video, and I thought, wow, it's an amazing story, and it really captures Anna. So I asked her husband if he could send me the 10-second video. I didn't explain what it was about. And then I passed the video to my daughter. Now, my daughter's studying illustration at Dundee University. So she was always going to be doing the book cover for this. And I passed her the video and said, would you be able to sketch something? So just in pencil, she sketched it, and I put some words to it. And I sent it down to Anna's husband, David, and I said, I'd like to dedicate the book to Anna, and I'd like to put this image in. And he called me about 3 days later, and he said, I would have called you immediately, but I couldn't stop crying. And he said, yes, I'd love that to be in there. So again, that's just one of the personal stories. In Anna's story, it doesn't mention that, but Anna was an amazing person. I just wanted to share that with everybody in the book as well, because we all have our own stories.
What an honour.
Amazing lady.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's got me emotional. Lovely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the what comes next, as I said, we're looking to try and get the books physically available in retail shops and to buy. The world of publishing's completely changed. You can now, if we wanted to immediately put this book up, and you can just order one hard copy from Amazon or some other suppliers as well, and they'll print just one copy, because publishing printers usually work on, you got to print so many hundreds or thousands. And I have ideas for book 2, book 3, and book 4 as well at some point, because there are just so many stories out there. And I have people contacting me regularly saying, if you're doing another book, then you might want to consider my story. And that will be the difficult part, because nobody knew about this to begin with. So it was easy to collect the stories. But the other book might
sure
be
we'll have a few people that would be happy to give you their stories as well. Inundated.
And in fact, again, I didn't mention this, but when I was doing the stories, I created a brief for people. Now, I don't have a background in journalism or writing at all. I love reading, but I'm involved in the world of IT. But I came up with a brief of if you can tell your story maybe in about 2,000 words, and we're looking for the emotion in it, because it's quite easy to say, I was diagnosed with cancer, I had my treatment, it worked. I wanted the human element to come out. And I said, and hope has to be part of it.
Yeah.
And for a couple of people, I had to go back and have a chat with them. But of the 39 stories, half the people wrote their own stories. And again, this is self-published. So I didn't have an editor peering over my shoulder saying, we need to change this, you need to change that. It was very important that it was told in their words. Yeah. And there's one story from the amazing Jane Barrow in there, where every second or third word begins with an F. But that's Jane. That's how she expresses herself. It's an amazing story. And for the other half, we'd go on a Zoom call and we'd have a chat. And I felt incredibly privileged, because people could open up to me, because I'd been through a similar experience. Perhaps if I was a journalist or just doing some research, they might not have told me what they told me. And for a couple of people, they shared things with me that they'd never told anyone else and never told their partner. And that was incredibly a privileged position to be in, that people trusted me with their story, and very, very personal feelings that they had. So for me, this has been such a fulfilling project. I've met so many amazing people. Unfortunately, we do still lose some, because again, that's the nature. In fact, we lost another contributor just a week and a half ago, unfortunately. But when we lose people, I get in touch with the family and say, if we're doing another print run, would you still want the story to be in there? And everyone so far has said yes.
Yeah.
Because there's, whether you're with us or not, there's still a message of hope within these stories. So it's been an amazing journey, and hopefully there's more to come.
Sounds like, and it's a legacy for them as well, isn't it? But also, when you were saying, about it helping you so much, people opening up, and for them, that's actually really healing to be able to open up and talk to you, and they've obviously found that in a place that they never thought they would before, but just having a conversation with you, they've been able to open up, and that's a really healing thing to do.
It is, yeah. And again, for anybody, again, well, I could talk about every single story, but there's not time for that. But for anyone who's been through chemotherapy and has faced the prospect of losing their hair, you might have heard of the Paxman scalp coolers, which potentially stop your hair from falling out.
I wore one.
You wore one, yeah. Yep. Well, yeah. There's a story in there from Claire Paxman. I know I've told you this, Sam, but Claire Paxman is part of the Paxman family, and they invented the Paxman scalp cooler, which is available in 64 different countries around the world, and hundreds of thousands of people a year use it. But the reason that they invented that was because their business was cooling beer. When you go into a hotel or a bar, there's a good chance there's a Paxman beer cooler, which started in the 1950s, cooling your beer as it gets pulled through the pump. And Claire's mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had amazing long curly blonde hair, and she didn't want to lose it. And at that time, this was in the 1990s, in some hospitals, you'd get an ice pack sort of attached to your head with a swimming cap or some gaffer tape. And it was incredibly painful, and they wouldn't last very long. And Claire's dad said, well, we're in the business of cooling beer. Surely there's a better way of doing that. And that's how the Paxman scalp cooling came into existence. And that story's in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. I was never offered that, so I just had cold showers instead.
Oh, did you? Then did it work for you, Marcus?
Yes, it did. Yeah, the first few rounds of chemotherapy, I started losing all my body hair, and my hair on my head went really, really thin. And then I read the Wim Hof book and started cold showers, ice baths, and all that sort of stuff. And then it all started to grow back. So,
fantastic!
But I wish I had your book when I was diagnosed, because they never gave me any hope. They just said it, and there wasn't a lot of hope for me whatsoever. So I wish I had something to lean against like that.
That's lovely to hear. Have you been tempted to do the Wim Hof retreat in Poland?
I'm now a Wim Hof instructor.
Are you? Oh, a good friend of mine is a Wim Hof devotee, and he did the retreat in Poland a few years ago, and absolutely loved it.
I've built a retreat in my garden, so I've got ice baths and do breath work for Wolo cancer patients and everything else, because obviously that helped me throughout my journey and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm now a qualified Wim Hof instructor. Still do ice baths. I had an ice bath just before I come on this sort of thing. So,
I did try the cold showers. My hair had no chance. The immunotherapy doesn't affect your hair, but I was reading lots and taking advice from people, and my friend Gary, who'd been on the retreat, said try cold showers. I tried them.
I ended up having 35 rounds of chemotherapy and running just over 2,000 miles whilst I was on it as well. So it's definitely something with the cold.
2000. Oh, fantastic! That sounds like a great story, Marcos.
It's a bit insane because obviously I wasn't given any hope whatsoever, because mine was suspected pancreatic cancer, was secondary on the liver, and there's nothing we could do with just palliative chemo. So I literally had to go down our own room, me and my wife. Like you said, no one wants to read about cancer, but we had the attitude was study the enemy to beat the enemy, and that's what we done.
Did you read Radical Remission?
Yes, Radical Remission, Autonomic Habits, Cancer is Not a Disease, how to use sunlight, and you name it. We chucked everything at it. David Goggins and Wim Hof, the whole lot sort of thing. And I started running, training, and I even made Justin run a marathon with me the day after I had chemo. So.
The day after, good grief!
Yes. Right. Yeah, my story's a little bit crazy, sort of thing. So,
but you then definitely one that would feature in Radical Remission, by the sense.
Yes, right. Yeah. I think the furthest I ran on chemotherapy was 55k ultra.
Good grief! Do you do any of these crazy hill races, or is it just?
Yes, we've got a 100k race coming up in 6 weeks' time.
Well, I don't live too far from a place called Kirkyetum, which is the end of the spine race. So yeah, there's always a bed for you, Marcos, if you
Oh, excellent. Yeah,
fancy doing
the
that.
Dragon's Back is definitely on my bucket list as well. So I think so.
Oh,
Oh, and I'm cancer free now as well. So
that's amazing.
yeah. So I'm living life grateful every single day. So I think so. But like I say, I think your book will just touch people in ways of, like, yeah, it is shit, but there is things out there that you can do. You can, be helpful, be grateful, and just helping other people will raise your immune system. And people don't realize just a smile a day, how much that can boost your insides as well. So,
Yeah, it is. But yeah, as we've touched on this call, and I found a few years ago with my group, finding other people that you can just open up to, and perhaps tell them things that you don't want to tell people who are close to you, because you know I always, when chatting to people, I would sometimes say, it's not unusual that we are the carriers of hope for other people. We are the people that are going through the treatment and have to perhaps be positive. The natural reaction, some says, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Yeah, I'm fine." And you might not be fine. That's a natural reaction. But this is a safe space where you can actually share with people how you really are feeling.
It's wanting
Exactly.
to protect your loved ones, isn't it? And so
It's like Sam's story as well. Like, we always joke because she's like, yeah, it's only a little bit of breast cancer, until the doctor actually sat you down and said, "No, Sam, we were talking about this today, weren't we?" So you were just so blasé about it. Yeah, it's just yes, right.
Oh, is anyone got any other questions you'd like to ask at all, or feedback? Always happy to take feedback.
Kev, how are the family?
Family are fine. Yeah, our kids no longer live at home. And Sophie's doing very well. We completely changed our life after my cancer treatment, and I got better from my colitis. Sophie had a little gift shop in the middle of Melrose, which we decided to sell. I moved from full-time work to part-time work, and we're perhaps people on this call will get this. We're living a better life post-cancer than we were pre-cancer, and that's absolutely bizarre.
it's a gift in that sense.
Yeah, and not many people get that.
No,
Yeah.
no,
We wouldn't choose to have cancer, that's for sure, but
no. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. And, so we have got the recording. I have actually managed to record it.
I'd love to get it, just chuck it out there. I know in a different country it seems crazy saying that, but Wolo, we're always full of crazy ideas and we're doing wonderful things, and I'd love to catch up one day, Kev. Maybe there's a way we can get Wolo into Scotland one day, who knows? But
you never know. And my
see.
passion's hill walking, and there's plenty of hills up in Scotland. So if you're ever doing a challenge that's not in Africa, well, then definitely count me in.
We could definitely do that. We definitely do that. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Let's get some heads together and
we could share stories. What a lovely I mean, God, just chucking it out there. What a lovely thing it could potentially be. We'll go on a big walk, tribe, call it stories, share stories or whatnot. I don't know.
Eat some haggis.
We'll get a campfire. We'll sit round and we'll share stories. But thank you for everybody's time.
Thank you for your time.
I have 1.5 requests. Everyone's got a copy of the book. Fantastic. If you ever know someone that might benefit from it, currently it's only digitally available. And as I said, all the profit, and it's over 50% of the jacket price goes to Maggie's. We've managed to give them a lot of money. And also, if anyone's read it or even some of it, any reviews on Amazon help us to raise the profile and raise more money for Maggie's. So those are the requests.
Brilliant. We can certainly do that. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Well, thank you for your time. Really enjoyed this.
Hope to see you soon in Scotland.
Yeah, will do.